This is a short video blog or vlog for Communication Fluency 601. This is week 3 and the topic is literary narratives on human trafficking. My name is Neely. The content of this short vlog is the article that we chose during our scavenger hunt assignment for week 2. So I thought the first thing I should do is share the title of the article and the citation I thought might also be helpful. Then I thought including the author's abstract would help give some perspective on where she's coming from and how she's approaching the subject. Then I quickly wanted to share why I chose the topic and why I thought her article in particular was relevant. Then a brief discussion that's confined for the purpose of this blog just to the introduction to the article. So fairly short. And then of course a conclusion on my thoughts just based on the reading of the introduction. Here's the article that I chose during our scavenger hunt assignment. We all like to think we've saved somebody. Sex Trafficking in Literature by Donna Bickford of the University of North Carolina of Chapel Hill. If human trafficking is a subject that interests you as well, and you would like to read the whole article, the online path to its location in the Everett Library is right there for your convenience. Here's her abstract. This essay considers the potential impact of sex trafficking narratives and their relationship to public perception and social change efforts. It fuses literary criticism and cultural analysis to discuss multiple genres of text, including mainstream news media reports and 2 categories of novels about sex trafficking. Finally, it argues for the power of narrative to catalyze and influence actions designed to eradicate sex trafficking. Why human trafficking? Human trafficking is an issue that I believe has great urgency in societal terms here in the United States. And those reasons are twofold. Firstly, the nature of the crime. The fact that basic human freedom is taken away from victims of trafficking is only the beginning of urgency of this issue. Whether you're talking about the physical and psychological brutality of forced labor or the outright indecency and health issues and outright danger of the sex trade, it would be hard to argue that human trafficking is anything but urgent. That urgency is magnified by the lack of an appropriate level of awareness. Although it is increasing, and that's a good thing, it still is not where it needs to be. And I speak there both generally and also from personal experience of recently doing a petition in my community. I was surprised and very disconcerted to find so many people as I was doing this petition who genuinely believe that human trafficking is a crime that happens elsewhere in the world. People truly don't understand. Not all people, but there are a surprising number of people who do not understand that this happens right here under our noses, on our streets and in our rural areas and all up and down the I-95 corridor. And that is something that only good communication can correct. So, to communication. Focus on narratives then is extremely relevant. Effective communication is the path to getting to that well-informed public. And a well-informed public can and hopefully then will find the will to eradicate human trafficking in the United States. On a personal level, I am simply unable to tolerate the idea of people living among us, hidden in plain sight, who are suffering unspeakably simply for the financial gain of others. It irks me to the core. And finding this article was a great way to blend my passion to fight the issue of human trafficking and my love of the constant pursuit of effective communication in all its forms. So, to the author's introduction, the issue. Introducing us to the issue of human trafficking, the author first defines it as including both forced labor and the sex trade. She points out that reliable data is difficult to come by, even from the most solid of sources. This is understandable given the criminal and therefore hidden nature of the activity. Even if it weren't hidden, it would be just plain dangerous to get close enough to accurately assess it. And that would be for anyone, whether you're a graduate student or a seasoned member of law enforcement. Based on the best data we do have, the majority of trafficking victims, according to the author, are women. I found one final point made by the author to be very interesting and important, and I included it here. Although sex trafficking occurs less frequently than forced labor, an observation not intended to minimize the need to eradicate both forms, it receives a disproportionate amount of public attention. That is a crucial point to remember as we attempt to improve the effectiveness of narratives on human trafficking in all formats. There were two specific sources mentioned within the introduction to this article. The U.S. Department of State, specifically its TIP report from 2012, and the International Labor Organization. The author's footnotes led me to her reference list, where I found multiple scholarly sources and also nonprofits that are known to be among the most reliable in providing accurate information on human trafficking. So, reading through her introduction affirmed for me that this author did her due diligence and chose her sources wisely. So whether I ultimately agree with her argument or not, at least I know I can certainly trust the information she's basing her argument on. And lastly, we come to the thrust of the article, the narratives on human trafficking. The author clearly describes her focus as tailored to two literary formats, news media and novels. Within novels, she does indicate a further breakdown into two subcategories. The original narrowing down to news and novels is appropriate for the scope of a scholarly article. You wouldn't want it to get too big. It would be hard to handle effectively. But then the exploration of the two subcategories on novels within the discussion indicates enough broadening to make the article as a whole sufficiently interesting and informative. It's also important to note that she intends to stay within the overall topic of sex trafficking. She makes that clear also. And again, that's appropriate narrowing of focus to make the article cohesive. Lastly, she indicates a clear connection between the way narratives present trafficking and how we ultimately respond to it. My conclusion on reading the introduction to this article is that it is worthy of my undivided attention. The reliability of the sources give me a comfort level in the value of the overall content. And it also prompted self-examination in that, as I read, I had to ask myself, how often do I think about forced labor when working on this issue or sharing it with people? The honest answer is that I generally don't. For me, that validates the author's assertion that sex trafficking gets disproportionate attention. I'm sorry to say that I seem to be an example of her point there. And although there's nothing inherently wrong with focusing solely on sex trafficking, it signals that there is something there for me to consider if I'm to think of myself as a true anti-human trafficking advocate. And I don't think that's a bad thing. That's a good thing to know. It's something that I would want to know. Along with the self-examination, I also experienced some confirmation in what I already understand about the issue. For example, the difficulty in getting complete and thorough data, enough to give us the true scope of human trafficking in the U.S. I don't think that true scope is within our grasp at this point in time. Overall, I anticipate new and promising lines of thought from this article on how awareness narratives can be improved. And this relates to my personal goal of creating effective awareness narratives on human trafficking that are targeted specifically for the sports industry.